It's everybody's favorite time of the week. Pat McAfeebas, week 5, starting now.
Yes, it is. We're back, and we are not joined alone today. We, in fact, have the esteemed coach of the Dayton Dragonites, Kevin.
Hello, everyone. It's great to be on this fantastic show.
I'm sure many of you know Kevin already. He's the coach of the Dayton Dragonites in this draft league here, and also he's very famous in Dayton for his charity work. He does lots of work with the Dayton Foundation, and I actually heard last month that you saved an entire orphanage of children. Is that true?
Yeah, it's true.
And rumor has it
Wow.
that while he was saving that orphanage, he was also donating to the puppy shelter that's next door. Is that also true?
Uh, yeah.
Wow.
Well, we are just so fortunate to have someone, Kevin, as kind as you on the show. And so we have a picture of your team here on the right. Do you have anybody on your team so far who's been like your MVP or your
Ooh.
favorite player of this season?
So I think, I believe, so obviously Ryko had that big week 3 win, which we really desperately needed with that Mir Herb tech. Um, and so I believe it has 6 KOs right now. Dragapult also has 6 KOs right now, so I guess they're tied for co-MVP. But for last week's game, Moltres came in clutch, cleaned up a lot of KOs, and was able to close out that win. So overall, I think every member of the team has contributed some meaningful amount. So I'm excited for the remainder of this season.
I love
Uh,
to see the Maurice on the team.
Yeah,
yeah,
unfortunately, can't. I'm trying to get Maurice into a game at some point, but we'll see when that happens.
Sure.
Yep. I mean, just a great team. One of my favorites, Ninetales, is on there, and of course Urshifu, especially in that shiny color where he's got red hands. You can tell like he's ready to fight. All right, and with that, we're on to the Week 5 recap. So first thing that happened, Florida Boldor, the only perfect team left, lose to Cinder is Ace, and this actually comes also with the second bullet point. It is a massive week for Cinder Ace, as Cinder is Ace and the Cincinnati Cinder Aces get a win. What are your thoughts on this, Skylar?
Yeah, the double mascot victory. It's a big week for Cinderaces all around the world. I'm sure Cinderaces are watching from home and they're like, you know what? I can do that too. And so there's many Cinderace who I think look up to what they're doing, and this is a good week to be a Cinderace.
For sure. Kevin, any thoughts on these huge wins for the Cinder Ace?
I mean, Cinder is ace. They had their win stolen by AB de Villiers, so it's nice that they were able to get a win this week.
For sure, for sure.
Um, and then the Cincinnati Cinder Aces, they're just an incredible team, 4-1. They have a big match this week, so it's just momentum for them heading into the playoffs. It's going to be really tough for them to be taken down.
Absolutely. I mean, I hope nobody remembers, but I did have them on the bottom tier of my tiers to start the season. So, looking like I got that one wrong. But
Yeah, that tier list is aging pretty
yeah,
poorly.
that it is. Moving on to our guest from a couple weeks ago, Las Vegas Latias, big man Nico get a forfeit win, which I put suspicious in parentheses here because he is the commissioner of the league, and it does seem just a little suspicious that he's just going to take a forfeit win without having to do anything. Skylar, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, we've been talking about Las Vegas getting bailed, talking about the rigged leagues and maybe the officials calling maybe a little bit in Las Vegas's favor. And so this is a real eyebrow raiser for me.
For sure. Kevin, I mean, as a player in this league, what do you think about this?
Well, I mean, the Las Vegas Latias, they're in that division race that's tight between him, the Cincinnati Cinder Aces, and my team, the Dayton Dragonites. So him, just getting a free win, that's, going to raise a few eyebrows.
For sure.
Certainly.
Another huge story. This one I was actually awake for because I was doing homework. But an 11th hour match goes to the Columbus Carvana against Scarlet and Green. They played it, I think, 30 minutes before the Sunday night deadline after having not scheduled it up to that point. I mean, this seemed like a huge momentum win for the Columbus Carvana. What did you think about it, Skylar?
I was asleep. I don't have a whole lot of thoughts, but it happened and they got it in, so good on them.
Yeah, I mean, I know you don't have a lot of thoughts, especially because this got Samurott Hisui back up to that kill leaderboard. Again, speaking of predictions that have aged very poorly on this show, that's another one. Kevin, what were your thoughts on this final match?
Well, the Columbus Carvana, they seem to be a second half of the season team. Uh, Last single season, I believe they started 0-3, but they rallied to make the playoffs. We'll see if they can repeat it again. They're currently in the playoff race at 2-3. We'll see how they can perform these last 2 weeks.
That we will. Next up, we got the Cerulean Sylveons are heating up, or should I say freezing up, with back-to-back weeks having an Ice Beam freeze help them to a win against two division leaders prior to losing to the Cerulean Sylveons. Um, what I think this could indicate a potential playoff run from them. What do you think, Skylar?
Yeah, I mean, I think freezing is a big thing that's going on here with the Cerulean Sylveons because the match that I remember them losing most recently was the one where they got frozen. So it's really a matter of when you're playing the Cerulean Sylveons of who freezes who first, and the Cerulean Sylveons freeze first, and that's why they're winning.
For sure. Kevin, honestly, as a player in this league, are you a little afraid of that Ice Beam coming out from the Cerulean Sylveons?
Mhm. Well, I mean, technically it's only a 10% chance, but it's happened twice in like 2 weeks, so maybe that's not a 10% chance.
I mean, I couldn't agree more. And rumor has it, league officials are looking into implementing a Gen 1 and 2 style freeze clause, um, which would prevent you from freezing more than one Pokemon, but we'll have to see. In the meantime, we're just going to have to run some covert cloaks. Next up, we got the Cleveland Zygardians, of course, had a rough loss last week against aforementioned Cerulean Sylveons, but get back on track with a win this week. What'd you see there, Skylar?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're a player that everyone expected to do well. So I think a little bump in the road, not staying down. I think it's a great sign to see that the Zygardians you're going to be here deep into the playoffs is my expectation. So I think getting back on the horse and keep going is the only thing I expected them to do.
I think so too. Kevin, what were your thoughts on this big win?
I mean, it's just last week's loss was unexpected, and this is more of the Cleveland Guardians that we have come to know and love.
Of course. Yep. I mean, I love the Zygardians. You know me, a huge fan, super fan. Got the shirt, got the hat. I'm in the stadium every single week, so it's good to see him get back in there. All right, next up we got the Ottawa Oshawots take down the Durant for their third straight win after starting 0-2. So, Skylar, what do you think? You think this may indicate the Oshawots are a playoff team as I predicted at the beginning of the season?
I mean, yeah, if they're steamrolling everybody, they've got momentum. I'm sure their Pokemon are raring and ready to go for the next week. And so I think they've got a whole lot of momentum here, and so they're going to be a scary team to fight because all their players are in it. And so whatever they're doing in the locker room, I think is something other teams should try to emulate to get that kind of performance out of their Mons.
For sure. Kevin, you have any thoughts on this, the Ottawa Oshawots?
I mean, it's just a really good week for that evolutionary family. Hifsui and Samurott is back on the kill leaderboard, and Ottawa Ocelots, are third straight win, and they're comfortably in the playoff spot as of now.
Have any of you heard from Duat? What's Duat up to these days?
I don't know. I mean, he might be. He's chilling with Articuno in Tier 6 or whatever, so he might be thinking about trying to get on a team for a playoff run.
Sure.
That's what
I
my
think
sources
Duat
are
is a
telling
guy
me.
who Duat is a guy who doesn't talk as much smack as some of the other tier sixes, and so I think Duat's a guy who actually deserves a shot.
I couldn't agree more. Actually, just really cool design with the two scallops, and I think he could be a game changer here at the trade deadline, which we're gonna have a little more discussion about here later in the show. All right. So with that, we're on to a. I know this was a very hot story. Got a lot of talk about it last week. The Beaver Creek Birds bomb threat update. Skylar, do you want to give this bomb threat update?
Yeah, so last week tensions were high as the bomb threat ended up postponing that week 4 game into week 5, but thankfully that game was able to get played. The threat was neutralized by Damp Polyrath, who really was a hero this week. I think the people in Beaver Creek were ecstatic. But Polyrath revealed that the bomb threat was traced back to the Angry Birds bomb bird.
Yeah.
Which,
Sorry, you go.
David, could you tell me your thoughts on this? Because this has big implications.
Look, it's not too far-fetched to point out that this team is called the Beaver Creek Birds, and the bomb threat caused by the bomb bird on the same week that Monster Hunter comes out, which we know their coach is a pretty big fan of. Could this have just been an excuse to try to get maybe a forfeit win, a sympathy win from the league? I don't know. I think it could have been an inside job.
Yeah, I've been here. Evan, do you have any thoughts on whether or not this was orchestrated from within the Beaver Creek's Birds internal organization?
I mean, I have no sources on the matter, so I don't really have anything to add to this.
I think
Well,
it's worth pointing out that the Beaver Creek Birds did say, we asked Nick live yesterday if he could comment on the situation. And his exact words were, I mean, and then he left the room. So he was very clearly nervous. He needed his lawyer to be able to present on this. I think there's a very real chance that something fishy is going on in Beaver Creek.
I honestly couldn't agree more. And look, this I just have to compliment our league admin, Big Man Nico, for instead of just giving Beaver Creek the win that they're clearly trying to get with this, and instead extending the match. I mean, look, our leader takes a lot of flack, but here he made the right call, I think.
I'm right there with you.
All right, so on to breaking news. Iron Valiant requests a trade from the Cleveland Zygardians. Now, you might be shocked this comes after a win, but in fact, Iron Valiant was not present in that game, did not make it off the bench. And after putting up a stat line of 3 games played, 1 death, and no kills, I think Iron Valiant's just sick of being second fiddle on the team, and he wants to go somewhere he can be the top dog. Skylar, what are your thoughts on this shocking news?
Yeah, I mean, if Iron Valiant doesn't want to be a role player, if he wants to be the star, I mean, obviously, that's not something he can do with Zygardians because that roster is loaded, and so he's gonna have to find a way to be happy in Cleveland or work on getting traded.
For sure. Kevin, what are your thoughts on this?
So I mean, you have like two superstars on the Zygardians. You have Dragapult and uh, Iron Valley, and then it's on paper having like the two best Pokemon in the league. It may seem like that's really broken, but sometimes it just doesn't work out that way. So we'll see how this trade saga unfolds. If Iron Valley gets its trade approved, or if it's going to stay on the Zygardians, how this will impact the rest of the season in the playoffs.
For sure. And I mean, Iron Valiant, another big thing to point out is that Delphox has pretty much been taking his spotlight. Everything he would want to do is being done a little bit better by that Terra Delphox. I mean, honestly, I can't blame him. I might request a trade in his position too, and I'll be interested to see what kind of trade offers are given to the Zygardians for Iron Valiant. All right, next, one of our most popular segments, an update on the Washington Genesects and Articuno beef. So there was a quote given by the Washington Genesects coach Jalek this week. I wouldn't call what Articuno is talking about historic beef when one of us is watching games from his couch. Jalek proceeds to lose an embarrassing game to the Pyroyal Challengers Bengaluru. And Articuno fires back with, I wouldn't call what Jalek is talking about historical beef when one of us is getting owned by a Probopass. Probopass, who's annoyed he's catching strays in this beef, replies, 0 attack Probopass head smash versus 248 HP and 8 defense Articuno does 104% to 123% and is a guaranteed OHKO. I mean, this is just a lot to take in. Skylar, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, we've been talking all season about Articuno just running his mouth and talking nonstop, and I think we're starting to see people are getting fed up with it. Probopass was no way involved and pretty clearly has taken a side here, and so I think I think I wouldn't be shocked if more Pokemon and coaches and players come out of the woodwork and start telling Articuno to stop talking because Articuno has been on the bench the whole season, doing nothing.
I mean, that's very true. Kevin, as a player in this league, what do you see in this conflict?
I mean, I think it's just something that I'm glad my team isn't dealing with right now because like it's just this external pressure on the Washington Genesects. Maybe it's impacting their plays the last few weeks, and I'm just glad that that's not affecting my team. I would say though, um, obviously I have Moltres on my team, and Moltres has tried to tell Articuno to keep it down, and but obviously Articuno hasn't exactly followed that advice.
Yeah,
Articuno does not listen to its brothers.
he clearly does not. And just a follow-up question, Skylar, are you surprised that Probopass, after competing against and defeating the Washington Genesects, is taking their side in this beef?
Yeah, I mean, I think they were rivals for this week, right? They were mad at each other, and the fact that they can unite and put up a front against Articuno here, I think it really tells you about Articuno's how Articuno carries himself and how nobody wants to be on Team Articuno.
I couldn't agree more. And honestly, with the trade deadline fast approaching, I don't think Articuno is going to get picked up, especially with tweets like these going out.
For
All right.
sure.
So moving on, we've got a special segment from our guest Kevin. Kevin's under duress list. So Kevin, take it away.
Yeah, so I think number one on the under duress list, you have the Washington Genesects. They're on a 2-game losing streak. I believe they're 12th in the playoff race. So they need a win this week, especially to quiet down Articuno. And then, the entire state of Florida is under duress. There's 3 teams in Florida: the Naples Knackley, the Florida Bulldor, and the Miami Durant, and they all lost this week. So they're obviously going to have to bounce back next week to keep keep their spot in the playoffs, and for the Florida Bulldor and the Naples Knackley to keep their division titles.
For sure.
And then lastly, we have Mandibuzz, who had some horrific performances this weekend. The Mandibuzz for the Miami Durant got one tapped by Terra Fairy Azelf, and then the Mandibuzz for the Baltimore Typhlosions missed 2 Toxics in a row. That's just not something you want from your tier 2. And I wouldn't be surprised if one of those teams is considering making a move with Mandibuzz.
Yep, that is some good foreshadowing, but I must agree with this list. I think the Washington Genesects are for sure under duress, and the whole state of Florida is having a very tough week. Something I do want to add to the under duress list is Pokemon not wearing the covert cloak, especially into Pixelate. I mean, we've seen an insane amount of secondary effects this week, and honestly, this season in general, I just think the covert cloak stocks are at an all-time high, and no one seems to be buying into it. But
Yeah, I think the 6 covert cloaks, I think that's a good strategy if you want to beat Pixelate.
I would agree. But I mean, I think this list looks great. I think Mandibuzz for sure under duress, and yeah.
Yeah. My heart really goes out to the state of Florida. They just had their Gulf's name change on them. No longer the Gulf of Mexico. It didn't even become the Gulf of Florida. I think that's tough for Florida. Ocean levels are rising. Florida's on the decline, and their teams aren't winning. It's just a tough time to be Florida right now. But hopefully they'll bounce back here soon.
That's for sure. I see the picture I got was out of date. But yeah. All right. So moving on. We've got one of the biggest stories this week was in the uh, sorry, in the game between Fluffyman and Tripichu, which it featured a Ditto that terrestrialized into a Stellar type with the Imposter ability. So when it came back in, Imposter did not activate. Now, you might not have known going into this that Imposter does not activate after terrestrializing into the Stellar type, which I didn't actually either, but it ended up not mattering as Cinder's Ace was still able to pull out the win. But honestly, it was a crazy moment this week. What were your thoughts on it, Skylar?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely had no idea that it's if you Terra Stellar, right? Not even like if you Terra
Yeah.
Watered, it would have been fine. So specifically nerfing the Terra Stellar Ditto. I don't think I don't think many people were concerned about Terra Stellar Ditto being a crazy issue. So the purpose of this nerf eludes me a little bit. But I think this was definitely a very scary position for Ditto as he was out there pretty defenseless and really had a hard time staring down that Whimsicott as a regular Ditto, which is not what he wants to be.
That's for sure. Kevin, I assume you watched this game. What did you see out there?
I mean, I was just like, I had no idea about this mechanic, and to be honest, don't know why this isn't a thing. Like, Terra Stellar is not broken at all. Like, why do you need to nerf Ditto specifically?
Yeah, like Ditto's not broken, Terra Stellar is not broken. Together, they're extra not broken, in my opinion.
This is actually Wolfie discussed this in a video, not the specific mechanic, but that Pokemon was afraid this type would be too broken, so they took many preventative like nerfs before actually releasing it because of how broken Fairy was last time they made a type, but it ended
Yeah.
up just making Stellar bad. So, yeah, it's just an unfortunate thing to see out there, but it is okay because the Cinder's Ace did end up getting the win.
It's great
Um,
that this happened now too.
oh, for
I'm
sure.
glad that the Ditto Stellar lesson happened now. Every single person in the league learned something, and this won't this won't be a problem come playoff time.
That is 100% true. I'm glad we got it out of the way now. But moving on, we've got the Scream Tail suspension waylays Durant, who end up losing this week. We have obviously Goat Cole's comments on this. Says the commissioner fabricating evidence is unacceptable. Our win against his team was justice for Screamtail, but nevertheless, Screamtail was suspended this week, didn't come to the game, and the Durant end up losing in a heartbreaker to the Ottoville Oshawots. What were your thoughts on this, Skylar?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. I think another goat that people like to talk about is Tom Brady. And so Tom Brady had his whole deflating the football scandal. But once they stopped deflating the footballs, Tom Brady kept winning because he's the goat.
For sure.
You see, if Torkoal was the GOAT, I would think without his cheating Screamtail, he would keep winning. But I think I think it really just Goat Cole is not the GOAT. I'm gonna say it here live. I think that Goat Cole is not a GOAT in my book. And so I would love to hear Kyle's thoughts at some point coming up here soon on the show about whether or not Goat Cole is the GOAT. Because I'm here to say Goat Cole is not Goat Cole.
Wow. I mean, that is a take that honestly has become more and more widespread as the season goes on. Kevin, what are your thoughts on seeing a suspension take down one of your competitors in this league?
I mean, I think we can all agree that, had Screamtail been available for that game, it would have handled that nasty plot lead as of a lot better than Mandibuzz would have.
For sure.
Um, so, obviously, I believe the Ottawa Ospreys got off to a quick 2-0 because of that nasty plot set, and Screamtail, might have still been 0-0 at that point. So,
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
I think that's really good game analysis. Not I mean, you don't usually get that from the normal hosts, but once you bring in someone who actually knows something about Pokemon, I mean, it's just it changes the podcast entirely. But yeah, it will be interesting to see. I don't know how long this suspension is actually lasting. I haven't looked into it, but if the Miami Durant are forced to go without Screamtail, they may be in trouble in the playoff race. All right. Unless you guys have anything else to say about the Screamtail suspension, we'll move on. So next up, we've got the playoff picture. As there are only 2 weeks left in the regular season, it is about time we start looking at this. So obviously in the 1 seed, we've got the Cleveland Guardians. The 2 seed, Royal Challengers Bangalore, 3, Las Vegas Latias, and 4, Naples Nackley. So those 4 teams would get a bye. And it is important to note that this bracket is set. It is not reseeded after rounds. So those black lines you see just direct to the next match you're going to go to. There is no reseeding between rounds, I would say again. And so this could, I don't know, what are you seeing from this bracket here, Skylar? What are the most exciting matchups you could see?
I think my question right now is, has anyone clinched playoffs yet?
So mathematically, no, no one has.
Okay.
But
Yeah, I think Las Vegas being in the 3 seed is, I mean, we've said the rule, everything seems to just be landing their way, and so interesting to see them there. But at the same time, I know that Nico's a talented player, and so I think there's a chance that there's some tomfoolery going around, but there's also a chance that Nico's just really talented, and so I'll let you guys decide as to whether or not he belongs there. But I think the top 4 seeds are pretty much exactly what I would have expected going into this season, and I think that all of the teams that I see right now in the playoffs slated for round one are very talented teams, and the Washington Genesects. So I'm not really surprised to see anyone who's here.
yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. Kevin, what do you think about this playoff picture?
I mean, I will say though, I think so. The Naples Nackley are 3-2, and I believe there's like 3 teams from like or no, 4 teams from 5 to 8 that are 4-1. So it's a little unfair that Naples Nackley get a advantage even though they have a worse record. Um, but on the other hand, it looks like if this playoff picture was set, I would have a rematch of my week 1 match against the Cerulean Sylveons, which I think that'd be exciting. Because it was a week 1 matchup to see how we've grown through the season and see who's better in the playoffs.
For sure, I do think that'd be exciting. Something I do want to note is that this bracket is the top, I think the top 4 seeds, at least the 1, 3, and 4 seed are identical to what they were in another league, Pika Season 3, which is interesting and could result, I don't know, we could see some similar matchups to that playoffs, but I digress. Yeah, I mean, it is honestly impressive to see the Washington Genesects in here, especially after the tragic season they've had. And in fact, the Miami Durant are in here too, even after the suspension of Screamtail. Is there any team, Skylar, that you think you're on the watch to maybe fall out of the playoffs?
That's a great question. I don't think there's any team that I think that obviously the league is really close right now. So
For sure.
I think that the most likely the teams that are in now and the teams that are not in now will not be the same come playoff time. Um, there's a lot of room for change here, but I don't see any clear outliers on this list.
I'd have to agree. Kevin, I mean, I know you probably don't want to talk about your compatriots, but is there anyone that you see in here that maybe just doesn't belong and maybe you don't think will be in here at the end of the season?
I mean, I could see these 12 teams being the 12 teams at the end of the season. It should be noted that there are, I believe, 5 2 and 3 teams, and 2 of them would make the playoffs. So it's still very close in that regard of which 2 of those teams would make the playoffs.
Yep. I mean, I think you guys are just missing an obvious one in Washington Genesects. I mean, with just I mean a roster like that, a coach like that, it's going to be tough for them to you see they're at the 12 seed right now for them to consistently win over the next 2 weeks and make it into the playoffs. It's going to be tough. But I would be excited to see them do it. I'd be excited to be proven wrong, you know. But with that, we'll move on to some of the biggest games of Week 6. We've got the Las Vegas Latias versus the Cincinnati Cinderaces, both 4-1. This is for the lead in the division. Skylar, I just gotta know who you got.
As a gambling man, I would never bet against Las Vegas. I'm taking Nico all the way.
That is a smart decision. How about you, Kevin?
I mean, if it's a fair fight, that's going to be a close game. But I mean, given some of the shady circumstances that have happened this season, I'll go with the Las Vegas Latias.
All right. Well, I'm gonna be the contrarian then. I'm gonna pick the Cincinnati Cinderaces. I'm gonna say they overcome a lot of bad calls by the refs. I think a lot of calls are gonna go Las Vegas's way, but I just think the Cinderaces have some sort of magic this season, and I think they're gonna be able to pull it out. All right. Next up, we got the Cerulean Sylveons and the Miami Durant. So this one is big because it could almost. So 4-3, 4 wins is almost going to lock you for playoffs just because 12 people make it. And if there's not like, I don't want to explain the math, but if more than half the league makes it, if you got 4 wins, you're probably making it in. So this could pretty much guarantee the Cerulean Sylveon's playoffs, and this could make it very hard for the Miami Durant to make it if they do drop this one. Skylar, who you got?
Yeah, I mean, as I was talking to Kyle yesterday, and he informed me that Ice Beam does not freeze in the sun, which is something that I actually was not aware of. Um, but given that information, I think I'm gonna take the Miami Durant. I think that the freezes have been the Sylveon silver bullet, and I think they're gonna have to play without that this week.
Yeah, I mean, that is a really good point. Kevin, what do you think about this matchup?
It's to be interesting because the Streetline Sylveons is the stalliest team of the 20, and Kyle, the coach of the Miami Durant, is a known hater of Big Stall. I believe he can take down Big Stall this week.
Well, guys, I guess I'm just gonna have to be the only one again to pick the Cerulean Sylveons. Look, they beat me. I think they've got a really solid coach behind there, and I do think, even though he won't be able to use his Ice Beam freezes like usual, I just think that Terapagos is too scary. I think Terapagos is too strong. I've actually become a real Terapagos fan after it froze me. I think it's a really good mon. Got a lot of stuff it could do. But I wouldn't be surprised. I'll say I wouldn't be surprised if the Miami Durant pulled this one out. But we will see. Next up, we got the Ottoville Oshawots and the Beaver Creek Braviaries. Another similar matchup of the Ottoville Oshawots could get pretty much guarantee their spot in the playoffs after starting 0-2 if they win versus the Beaver Creek Braviaries, also making it very tough for the Braviaries to make it into the playoffs. Skylar, last time, who you got here?
I think it's noteworthy to say that the Beaver Creek Braviaries have won 2 games, lost 1 game, and forfeited 2 games. I think is something that's worth noting here. And so I think if the Beaver Creek Braviaries show up, I really believe in Nick as a coach. I think he's talented, but if he can get his I'm questioning whether or not he can get his Pokemon to get motivated to even get on the field. And so I think for that reason I'm gonna take Ottoville.
All right. I think that is a reasonable analysis. How about you, Kevin?
I mean, out of all spots again, they've won 3 straight games. They're on fire. And again, the players for the Beaver Creek Brave, they've been playing a lot of Monster Hunter lately. So I mean, we'll just see how much focus they have for the game. So I'm gonna go with the Ocelots.
All right. I think these are you guys again are going with the same person, and I'm gonna take the other one. I think Nick knows this is his chance. Like he's gotta get this season started at some point, and he's gonna be in the locker room all week this week, telling his guys, we gotta get out there. We gotta get out there and play because when we play, we win. When he gets out on the field, he's a great coach.
For
And
sure.
I just I think yeah, I think he's gonna do it this week.
Yeah, I think I'm right there with you.
Yeah,
I think that Nick totally can win once when he plays, but the question is, does he play? And so I think
yeah,
that for me is the biggest thing that is in Ottoville's favor here.
for sure, for sure. All right. And this is one of the biggest stories of the season, I will say. A game-changing trade for the Miami Durant, where they drop Raging Bolt and Mandibuzz and pick up Roaring Moon and Sandy Shocks. As Kevin hit on earlier, Mandibuzz had a tragic performance, not only for this team, but for the Baltimore Typhlosion this week. So, Skylar, what are you seeing from this?
Yeah, I mean this is a big personnel change here. I think Raging Bolt is a guy who as a doubles player, Raging Bolt is the best one in this field, and so I'm shocked to see him getting traded away. But Roaring Moon and Sandy Shocks are, I believe in them. And at some point earlier in the season, I think we were, I believe Kyle was talking about Roaring Moon. So I know he's had his eye on Roaring Moon for a little while. And so I'm excited to see what the kind of behind the scenes conversations have been between Roaring Moon and Kyle, and what kind of things Roaring Moon can contribute to the Miami Durant.
That's true for sure. I do think we're gonna have Kevin go here in a second, but I do want to point out that if we look at this graphic, he goes from Raging Bolt, as you said, a great doubles Pokemon, and in this graphic has 240 health to Roaring Moon with only 140 health. I think that's almost inexplicable. And clearly it's move, Bellowing Thunder doing 70 times, where you can do 140 damage if you discard your two energy cards, versus only 120 from Roaring Moon. I mean, it seems almost unbelievable to me. Um,
Mathematically, it seems a little funky.
yeah, I must agree. And Mandibuzz, 120 health, and you can do 120 damage. Sandy Shock's 120 health, and you can only do 60 damage. It's just, I mean, I don't want to call the trade ill-advised, but it might be. And Kevin, what do you think about this?
I mean, I will say that there's a little bit of history between Kyle and Roaring Moon, with Kyle calling him Roaring Mid all the time. I'm glad that they were able to make it up and get on the same page for Roaring Moon to rejoin the Miami Durant.
Do you think their history might affect Roaring Moon's performance on this roster?
I don't know the behind the scenes conversations that were had leading up to this trade, but hopefully that for them that they can be on the same page, because obviously the Miami Durant, they're 2-3, they need some wins to get into the playoffs.
For sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, is it so whether it's a good trade or not, I do think this really shakes up the teams. It really shakes up the game, and it's going to make the next week of Durant games extremely exciting.
I mean,
All
another
right.
interesting thing is, will anyone pick up Raging Bull or Mandibuzz after they've been dropped?
That is a really interesting question because Raging Bolt is for sure one of the best Pokemon in the format, and I do think there are some teams that could have their eyes on it. All right. With that, guys, I think it is time we had a discussion that the not subscribed percentage of my viewers are just unbelievably too high. We're going to need you all to like and subscribe, or you're going to make Skylar cry.
That's true. I'd really hate to cry, and I
No.
just think it's crazy that the odds of freezing an ice beam is higher than the percent of people who are subscribed to Craisins, and so I think we got to fix those numbers here. So
Yeah.
let's everyone right now, while you're watching the video, go click on that little subscriber button, and I won't cry next week.
Yeah,
Also, don't forget to like the video and leave a comment saying what your favorite part of the video was.
for sure. And we read all the comments. We try to respond to all of them, and yeah. So with that, Kevin, thanks for coming out today. It was,
Thanks for having me on.
of course, Skylar, you got any final remarks?
Yeah, Kevin, again, thank you for coming. I know you're busy with your whole volunteer saving the world schedule, but thank you for making time to give a little Pat McAfeebas insights. It's been really nice to have you.
Thank you so much.
All right.
But with that being said, thank you everyone for watching the Pat McAfeebas show. And yeah, you already subscribed, so I've got nothing else for you to do. Go have a good rest of your day, have a good Tuesday, and go win some draft league games next week.